go on to the last section, which is with Steve.
Okay. Before we move on to, we were going to do it, let me just explain what we were going to do, and then I'll tell you what we're going to do. We were expecting quite a few more people here today, and we were going to have 4 tables with a workshop on each table. We were going to have 4 different scenarios, one of which you can see here, one on each table, and the 4 groups would just keep moving around the tables, 10 minutes on each table, and we get some value from talking through the different case studies that we're looking at. Okay, we haven't got the people here to do that, so we're going to have one big workshop, and we're going to go through each case study one after the other. Before we go into that, John's just suggested that I explain how the company I work for deal with health, well-being, mental health, that kind of thing at Kier Construction. We were going to have Island Rose here explaining how they deal with it, but obviously Steve couldn't make it, Ambrose couldn't make it, sorry. So how does Kier deal with it? We have mental health first aiders set up in each of our offices. We probably have 3 or 4 in each office, and their names and faces are emblazoned on the notice boards, and their responsibility is to send out periodically some material to explain certain situations about mental health, explain who they are, make sure everybody knows who they are, and at the bottom of all their email addresses they explain that they are a mental health first aider. So the idea of getting the information out to the workforce to say that we have mental health first aiders and these are the people, we think we cover that okay. Well-being side of things, we're very much on the start of that road. We haven't, there haven't been an awful lot of activities arranged around that. We've had a couple of days where the mental first aiders have been in one of the meeting rooms in the office, and there's been a general invitation, come in, have a cup of tea, have a chat, and it doesn't have to be about mental health. It can be just about, you know, how you're doing at work, you know, what's going on, what your difficulties, what your challenges, or just talk generally about life, and those have been reasonably successful, not overly subscribed to, but we have, you know, a general flow throughout the day. So, as I say, we're quite early on in our development of that kind of education, that kind of freedom of talking about mental health and about well-being. So that's really all I'm going to say about Kier right now, and we're going to go back to our workshop here. The purpose of this workshop is to show people that they too can identify where there might be something wrong with somebody who they work with, somebody they meet at work. There might be some issue that that person is having to deal with, and to try to make you guys a little bit more aware of the common conditions that might affect our colleagues' mental health. And each one of these scenarios is trying to get you to think about a certain condition that that person might be going through. So there's 4 scenarios, and we'll spend up to about 10 minutes on each scenario. I've got a facilitator pre-arranged for each one of these scenarios, and I'll ask them to come up and help with the discussion. I'm extremely uneducated in this field, so all I'm trying to do is trying to introduce the subject and get everybody to start talking about it freely. And then we'll make some notes on the flip chart about each case, and hopefully we'll summarise it at the end of each case and maybe learn something about that as well. Okay, so if I can invite Katie first on the first scenario. There you go, rather than read it off the board.
Thank you very much. Okay, talking certain activities. Has anybody got any ex-service people working for them? You don't have to say any names, or yeah, it's not just on our side. Okay. So from talking to a few other people, not just in this room, it seems that there are quite a few people who they've been in the army, or they've gone to the Navy, they've come to work on construction sites, and particularly on ours, we have had just a few issues. I don't know if anybody can hazard a guess as to what might be a problem. I did talk about it a bit earlier.
Noise of some of the machines.
Yeah, so when you've got drills, you've got jackhammers, you've got big Manitous crashing and banging around. We've had quite a few people coming up, and you can't tell immediately why they're stressed. They don't necessarily want to talk about it. And it is important, and it's funny because just through conversations I have had people saying, you know, I used to be in the army, I've had bombs going off behind me, and I hear a drill or a jackhammer, and it just sends them into panic mode. And it's interesting because if you don't talk to them, how are you supposed to know that something like this can be an issue for them? That's anxiety as well, because they might not know when something's going to go off. You might have episodes of depression because you think, I've come out of the army, some of them have come out, they don't have any specific skills, so they'll do labouring or they might help out with the groundwork. They don't have a lot of other ways of making money, so of course they don't want to lose their job, but then of course you've got a jackhammer going off. What do? They don't want to come up and say, I don't want to do this job anymore because it's going to set me off. They're worried about the stigma that's attached to it, but at the same time, you know, they don't want to lose their job, so it's one of those, what do you do? So our way of approaching it is to try and have open discussions as much as we can. We do have toolbox talks. We have an induction. Does anybody else do site inductions when people join? Yeah. And it's quite amazing how many people, when you've got them in an environment, we might have 5 people, we might have 10 people. If people want to say in the induction, then they can. If they want to come to me after, then they can. But we've just found it really useful to say, tell us a bit about you, tell us a bit about the job that you used to do before. Tell us if there are, I don't know, any issues that we can work through with people. So that's been quite useful. That's what our company's done about it. I don't know if anybody else has ever encountered this or not really been too much of an issue. That's quite lucky then.
What other sorts of things could the company do for somebody who has clearly an issue with the loud noises or certain activities?
Move them away from that particular area.
Yeah, it might not always be possible because building site is a building site.
I mean, some of it, I think, can be scheduling, because, I mean, if you know that somebody's got a certain issue and you don't want to necessarily just get rid of them because they're very good at what they do, we found another way of doing it is through planning. So you make sure that if you've got somebody like that that can be doing work down one end of the site and all the heavy machines are down the other end of the site, that can be quite useful.
Could you do things like individual mentoring, so there's a sensitive individual who can actually first of all pre-warn them about what's going to happen if they're not, you know, if they've got their back to the work, they can actually be just to let them know that this is going to happen. It's just a jackhammer.
If they can prepare themselves, then it's not that surprise.
Yeah, it's kind of, if they can't see it, sometimes that's what goes off, because their mind actually takes over rather than their.
That's what I was going to say. Could you warn them? Yeah.
Do you have an interview prior to taking them on?
Yes.
That you make a list is not a good word, but
So we have a medical health checklist which I bought in, and what we do is we'll have somebody in. Usually they'll come in and they'll say, I don't know, I'm a chippy or whatever, or I'm a ground worker. Have you got any work? If we do, then we'll have them in for an interview, and if we think actually we could really use them, I get them signed this form, and it's anonymous in terms of between them and myself at the beginning. I'm the only one who I'll read through it and I'll say, right, and we talk about smoking, alcoholism, we talk about physical problems, because also the amount of people who've got like back issues and they don't think to tell us, or I had somebody who was a serviceman, he got wounded, and the amount of medication he was on, you think, oh my God, if I'd not checked that and he'd fallen off of a roof. do you know what I mean? It's little things like that, but so the health form is quite useful because it will say what medications they're on. It will say, you know, we do say we're not promoting drug use or alcohol use, but if you've got that as a problem, tell us and we can try and help you work through it. I think that's what I was saying. What was your question again?
No, just on about the interview, original interview before,
Yeah.
because that can flag up some
So we
trigger
will
points,
ask
can't
them,
it?
we will say, you know, have you got any past issues with mental health, or do you have any current mental health? And actually there's quite a lot of guys who've got anxiety.
Yeah,
And
a lot of people wouldn't own up to things anyway, but
well, they won't
it's a
to
good
other
start.
people. So it's one of those, in the canteen they won't, but lots of them actually have said on their form that they have got anxiety, and then I can ask them what form of anxiety, because there's so many types. You've got social anxiety, where you're worried about how others perceive you. I mean that's quite a big one, and then that kind of stops you telling anybody else, that you end up going around in a circle because you can't talk about it to anyone because you're worried that they'll make fun of you. And then if you don't, how do you sort it? And that's quite a big thing with some of the workers on our site. I mean, it's not just servicemen. I suppose the original thing we were talking about was the PTSD. But yeah, it's anxiety, it's depression, they can have PTSD, there's a whole range of factors, and then through those you get the alcohol misuse, the drug misuse, and it all comes into play. So I think it's really important to just talk about it, be open.
So if we do think there is a possibility of PTSD, then there might be other issues that go alongside that, like you're saying, like the alcohol and the drugs. So it's things to look out for, really. I mean, the purpose of these studies is to make our minds sort of start widening the possible reasons why somebody is acting like they are. It might not be down to just one single thing. It might be several different issues at the same time.
The Isle of Wight College does do, and I'm bigging up the college now, the college does do a really good, it's a distance learning course that I did. It's free of charge, and it's just quite a good thing if anybody's interested in mental health, where it tells you what different problems there are and just gives you different ways that you can deal with it. It's a level 2, and you do get a certificate at the end. I didn't get paid any extra for it. I'm not being paid commission for promoting it, but it's just something interesting that if you've got anybody in your company who, I was talking to you for example, we kind of, Jackie, we do like a human resources role, although we're not human resources, and you were talking to me about kind of being a kind of like an agony aunt. It's just something that's useful to have behind you, because I didn't know about it. I'm not a mental health expert. I came from kind of teaching, then I was in project management translating, now I work on a building site, and it's now more than ever that the mental health kind of is an issue, because they say, you know, the amount of construction workers that die each day because they feel they can't talk to anybody. Has anybody seen the magazine? It's got the yellow boots on front. I think it's called Connection. It's in where Katie Anderson's got her little office, and it's really good. It's a magazine all about construction issues, and it does mention the importance of mental health. So if anybody wanted to have a look on LinkedIn or online, it's useful.
Steve, it's not what it says up there, but it's just reminded me of an issue I had several years ago with a very hard worker actually, and I started to notice that he would avoid any new activity or any that he wasn't routine. And when I started to look into it, chatted with him over a period of time, it turned out up. His dad used to let him mess it up and then belittle him. So that fear of being belittled, ridiculed as a small child had stuck with him into as he was in his 30s. And it was rather sad, actually. What we did, we used to either break the process down into manageable steps that he could feel comfortable doing if it was a new process, or put him with somebody he was comfortable working with that wasn't frightened to make those steps. And of course, as soon as he'd done it the once and not messed it up, he was all right with that. But it's just such a weird thing.
I think that's knowing the people a little bit though. So for example, if you've got an ex-serviceman, when I was at school we did CCF, which is like a cadets thing, so it's if you think you might go into the RAF or the Navy. Like Claire, I've got many hats. But you're very rigid being told what to do, and for some people that works really, really well. So for example, with ex-servicemen, it might be that you give them a rule and then you know, okay, they know exactly what they're doing, and it might be anxious because, I mean, I've had some people, especially younger people, who come on site and they've got absolutely no idea, and it's not because they're lazy, they just have no idea what they're supposed to be doing. They need instruction, but then there are other people, and like you said, if someone had only had a chat and said, you know, is there anything that I should know, if he only kind of mentioned that, it might be that we say, okay, you make a mistake, I'm not going to castrate you, I'm here to help, or if you've got any questions, it is okay to ask, and you're not going to be, you know, no one's going to think that you're an idiot for it. So, yeah.
Okay, well, thanks very much for that. Katie, that's the first one through.
That's a bit, yeah, wow.
We're probably going to repeat quite a few things on these other ones as well, because they'll have very similar very similar symptoms, perhaps.
So for this particular one, we've got Tom. He's an ambitious employee. He works a 45-hour week. His wife is self-employed, and Tom regularly helps her out in the evenings and at weekends. Tom can be very short-tempered at times. So what do you think the problems might be?
Not getting enough rest.
Sleep, yeah, which can in turn diet, obviously, which we've covered like quite a lot today.
Yeah.
So diet, what else might be meaning he doesn't get enough rest?
There's some dirty comments coming from over in there.
Personal
No, not dirty.
No.
He just said the wife.
Well, the wife is self-employed, so he's going to be potentially worried about financial, that he's the breadwinner, if she's not being able to participate in the finances as much as like he wants, but he's also helping her out at the weekends. Maybe as an ambitious kind of employee, he might want to be doing more work for his own company and like progressing forward for that, and not necessarily for her. So he might be anxious that he's not doing enough for the company that he's working for either.
Sounds like he's under a lot of pressure.
A lot of pressure, yeah.
And what does pressure lead to?
Stress, anxiety.
Yeah, I mean, pressure's okay, isn't it? We all like, we probably work better when we're under a little bit of pressure. When you layer all those layers of pressure up.
It can also cause sort of physical problems as well, you know, stomach aches, headaches, like feeling sick, stomach problems, and that can then cause you to be, you know, whatever. Of course, like if he's short-tempered, he might not be eating properly, he might be taking it out on other people on site.
A lack of routine, which obviously then, you know,
Exactly.
on the you know, on the eating and everything, you know, if you some weekends, but other weekends, if you haven't got routine to that.
Sounds like he's got no me time.
Yeah, or support necessarily if he's feeling like
He could be
he's
quite lonely if his wife's working every evening and every weekend, and he could just be on his own.
It maybe he feels a bit inferior because if she's self-employed and she looks after the kids and everything, and like she's earning loads of money and he's working all these hours. If he's ambitious, he might not be earning as much, but he might not want to tell
so
her.
like
So self-worth is kind of
Yeah,
issues,
yeah. And like say exercise is all part, if you're not getting that kind of like time to yourself where you can do those sorts of things, yourself. You know, you can't always get that time because you're having to support family, your wife's working at God hours. But what sort of things do you think, as a company, what do you think you might be able to do for them? There's certain things that I would potentially look at doing in our company. We would potentially look at pulling them, if you've noticed they're short-tempered, perhaps having an informal chat away from the workplace so that they don't feel like they're being segregated, or having that privacy away from the other blokes on site, because people do chat. I've never known men on site be more of a gossip, but they are. And just like that wildfire gets around. But in doing so, like being able to ask the guys open-ended questions so that you're being able to learn what their problems are without trying to force the problem into their mouth. So, are you anxious? Are you depressed? Are you allow them to talk to you openly, and then find out from them what their actual problem is, because despite the fact they might spill everything about their entire life, you need to actually just pinpoint what you could actually physically do for them. Whether you allow them to, you come up perhaps with a plan to be able to work flexibly with them.
I think you'd have a commitment problem here.
Yeah, I was thinking,
I'd have a
Trevor,
commitment problem.
as an owner of a business, or part owner of a business, if you knew that one of your employees was working a good number of hours for your firm, which is great during the week, and they were working long hours at the weekend for their family business, how would you feel? What would your opinion be?
It's so difficult, isn't it? Because you wouldn't want to feel like that you're interfering with them, because that'd probably make them
Feel inferior.
yeah, or anti what you're doing, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not ideal, obviously. It's very, very tricky in how to.
The first thing, I mean,
You can do these
I'm a numbers man,
questions.
so I'd be looking at 45 hours and go, well, how does that break down? Is he working 45 hours because he's not very efficient, or is he working 45 hours because he's got too much to do?
Well, I actually looked at it and
And then
thought
you-
working 45 hours, that's actually not.
That's not bad.
Sarcastic.
About average
To
nowadays,
be
isn't it?
fair,
I was going to say, is he part-time?
I don't know, well, I was actually looking at it thinking, well, it's even.
But if he's an employee, he may be
So
on 37 and a half.
how could I reduce that in a way? Sorry.
But another issue would be, I mean, you're talking about him being a very willing worker. I think from what we've noted, there's a work-lifestyle balance issue. So what you might also want to be doing is making sure he doesn't volunteer for even more if he's ambitious.
Yeah.
So you want to just
So not pushing him into too much training or doing that sort of
So you
thing.
need to see what the 45 hours is made up of.
Yeah.
And whether it's inefficiency, like he's not organised, and then it's looking at scheduling work, timings, list making, all that sort of stuff. So you can organise the day a bit better, which hopefully will then free up a bit, 5 or 6 hours of more time in his week. Or if he's overworked because he's got too much to do on his plate, then it's looking
Or is he just a guy that can't say no?
Yeah.
And
Can't
just
delegate.
and don't want to let people down.
Well, certainly at our firm, we have to ask permission to be able to work outside of work.
Yeah.
See what I mean? That would be, if we were found out to be doing working outside of work, then it could be a disciplinary. Because I think the company recognises that you have a finite usefulness number of hours at your best during the week. You have to have time for yourself, and the company wants the best bit out of you, and they don't want anybody else taking some of that.
But in this scenario, he's not saying he's working really, is it? He's saying he's helping her, which is.
So we need to
That is
understand
completely different.
Children,
Yeah.
that could be looking after the children at
Yeah.
night time,
Could be.
doing all the housework,
Yeah.
doing everything, because she said you don't quite know. So the scenario is probably not the best.
But it depends on the individual, doesn't it? Because some
Translate,
people thrive off never having any time,
Yeah.
and other people don't.
I think it's worth having a look at it, because sometimes you get people, and I've done it myself, where you work, and then you actually end up making yourself sick. So although the company might go, oh, that's brilliant, they're doing 45, 50 hours a
Get
week,
used to
brilliant.
that, people get
And
used
then-
to what you're doing for them.
Well, then you go, have to pay them 6 months because they go off with depression or something because they've just burnt themselves out. So
Yes.
it's one of those duty
There's
of
a
care
cost there.
things where you go, is it better to have someone
I'd
working
say
50
if you've
hours
got
a
sick
week
pay,
or less time a week but they're healthy?
It's also quality of work that you're going to get out of them. They're working nighttime, daytime,
Amazing.
weekends.
Basic pay.
You can only
Much
do
sicker
so
people
many
are.
hours of quality work.
Break it down.
Yeah. So you might not be getting the best out of your employees by
We're
doing that.
establishing like what this person's problem and what their issues are and how we could help them. And so if you can like make them feel self-worth, like you said, you can encourage them, but it's also perhaps their colleagues being made aware that there are, not them as an individual, but there are issues where people feel stressed out, and making them aware of these things as well. It's mindfulness, it's encouraging people to be that mindful and be that way. There are stress questionnaires that you can get, the HSE do brilliant ones, where you can, they ask you about, are you getting the right level of work commitment? Do you actually know what you're being asked to do? Blah, blah, blah. And there's sort of scale to 1 to 5. And you can answer those questions and you get given a statistic and it says whether you're within the realms of being stressed or not. And that's quite, it's good for people that don't know how to talk to others. If they don't know how to ask them, what's the problem? You know, here you go, have a questionnaire, then we can discuss it after. But I think the important thing about remembering when you've got a situation like this, it's not over-promising somebody what you're going to do, be measurable about what you can deliver to them so that they know, and then also making sure that you're not comparing yourself to their problems, because I can look at that and think, wow, why is he so stressed? Jesus, I do another 50 hours just at home. So like, you know, you've got to be careful with the way you approach people, and then like how you then relate that to and help them out moving forward. But
It could be debt problems or mortgage problems,
yeah.
and sometimes, you know, people are good at different things, and people that are very good with their hands aren't always very good at explaining themselves. And I found myself in the position where I've had to write a letter to somebody to explain something that for an employee, or to defend them, or to, you know, they're being prosecuted when really they shouldn't have been prosecuted, but they couldn't explain themselves. Things like that, if you're not very good at explaining yourself, it could quite easily get on top of you because you feel the whole world's against you.
Okay. Right, well, I think yeah, for the sake of time, we'll move on. Thank you very much. Danny, are you able to do the next one? Did you get the
Did I miss the
email?
memo?
Did you not get the email?
No, I didn't.
That's all right. I can do it if you. What have I prepared for it?
Well, you're going to do the writing, because I'm not very good at writing. I get very stressed when I have to write stuff. Right, no, I didn't get a memo about Billy. Right, so Billy is late to work on a regular basis. He takes several breaks throughout the day and has become increasingly withdrawn at work, avoiding social interaction.
Right. So what do we say about Billy then?
Have you got childcare problems?
What's our first perception about Billy from an age perspective? My first thought when I said Billy is...
It's on the week.
Down 20.
Yeah.
Just his name.
Yeah, the fact that Billy was late to work, I thought he's a young, you know, somebody starting, not an older individual. But anyway, that was just my initial thought. So what do we think? Why he's regularly late to work?
He's stuck at the roundabout.
Well, you can only allow
Yeah,
that
it is.
excuse for the first
No,
year.
no,
That's why
second.
then they should be
Second.
leaving work, leaving home a bit earlier. So,
Yeah.
Always an answer.
So Billy's stuck at a very safe and well-organised roundabout work. So.
Do you think you might be being harassed? Seriously. On site there's a lot of like banter,
Yeah.
but it's only banter if two people find it funny. And legally, it's to do with if you think that someone's harassing you, you've got the legs down on. Even if it's not to do with how you perceive your joke, it's how it is perceived by others. And I know this from somewhere that I've worked before, where someone felt like they were being constantly made fun of, but in like a banter way. So they were coming late, and they were going up into containers at lunch and not sitting with everybody else because they were scared that they were going to be made fun of.
Yeah.
It's difficult.
But I mean, for me, the first line of that was two aspects. Again, I'll refer to the fact that I'm a information and numbers man. I want to know the detail for why he's late. So it's either before he's setting off for work, there's a reason. So home life could be an issue. Yeah, it could be something with regard to his social habits. I've already got a picture in mind of what the individual looks like, so I might be making judgments on the fact that young Billy is late for work because of his social habits, and then, or is he's late for work because he's trying to avoid something, like you said. There may well be the fact that he is then added to the fact that he's sort of withdrawn from the group. Is it because he's avoiding interaction, or is it something that's actually undertaken outside of work? So we might be able to look at, I think Nigel said, drug and alcohol tests for individuals may give you some information.
So what social habits could this be about? Drugs? Anything else?
Relationship breakups.
Late for work is a lack of sleep, but he's just,
Yeah.
burning the candle.
Yeah, that's right. He just likes playing on his.
Might have a young baby.
Yeah, he might
Yeah.
be likes playing on his Xbox
Very
till
little, really damaged
12 o'clock.
works as well.
Laziness.
Antenatal depression. There you go. There's one. Throw that in. What's on it?
Sometimes preparation, like the amount of guys who I said, so why were you late? And they said, oh, the alarms didn't go off.
Didn't go off, yeah.
And the other classic is transport.
Regularly.
Regular
Oh, Jesus.
So you
Transport
could
one.
look at how you get to work as well. So
Busting, get
what
crowd
parking
parking
on the
on.
No,
Is he
just
driving himself or is
my
he
car
taking
breaks
Early
down,
back.
and they take the day off to sort their car. And they,
It may well be that Billy's
Yeah,
late for work.
Oh.
He gets the lift from somebody else who's
Car's
actually late
broken
for work.
down.
So it may not
Well,
actually.
it could be, Billy could be a girl's name as well. And it might
Yeah, we like this.
Stop the camera because someone's going to get the neutral in a minute.
No, but Billy, you might find out that Billy is an unofficial carer of
He's
disabled
transgender.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah, as well.
So
siblings.
when we started off, first of all, we were
He's in
talking about
transition.
understanding the individuals and their background. So if you talk to people and have a conversation, then you get to know their background. Because that may well be, we've made a kind of a judgment that it could be drugs or alcohol, or burning the candle and playing with his PlayStation. It may be that he's got an elderly mother and he's there to have only care, and that's the only way that he can get to work.
And we've actually got someone like that. He regularly takes time off, but then you look further into it,
Yeah.
and it's
And it's
quite a bit more
something else,
complicated than that.
Yeah.
But if we add
Round
the information, the
positions.
fact that he's now withdrawn from the group and avoiding social interaction, then we've got some more information that probably puts into the picture other aspects. So why might he withdraw from the group and be not very social?
Perhaps he's embarrassed about what he's having to do.
Don't want to ask people asking questions.
Yeah,
Ask questions
he might be,
about
yeah.
what he's doing.
Maybe a private individual that doesn't want to ask for help. And again, this is how, if we get to know people on a personal level, then you get to know their background and who they are as an individual,
He
and
might
then you're
not
more in a
actually-
position to.
He might not actually have anything to eat, or he doesn't actually
Yeah.
want to be sat there not eating. I mean, it's something.
Yeah, when
Doesn't have
you
any
don't
money.
feel like you fit in with a group, you tend to isolate yourself from that group. So if those people are enjoying themselves and having a bit of a laugh, and maybe having a card game at break time, or going down to the fish and chip shop, getting themselves some chips or something, and he hasn't got any money for that, and he therefore want to distance himself from that group. If they don't have anything in common, then you'll probably find the person distances from that group. But
So what can the company do? So
Yeah.
I'm company director, I've got Billy, he's a bit of an issue because he's late, he's not really being efficient, he's not interacting with the group. It's a building site and the team environments are really important on building sites because you need people to do what they're asked to do at a certain time and be respectful of the rules on the site. So how can we actually manage this individual with regard to
But you've
him?
got to find out why he's always late.
So how are we going to do that?
You've got to have him in and have a chat with him.
Have a conversation, yeah. Yeah, conversations is the first thing. It gets to the root of why he's late and why he's withdrawn. Now let's make an assumption that it's drugs is the issue. He's got a habit.
You've got to put him in touch with someone that can help.
So how do we approach that?
That's what we.
What am I going to say to him? I've had a conversation with him. I go, I can obviously smell on your clothes that you are smoking skunk, is it? I don't know. I'm not familiar with these terms. So, how do we deal with that as an employee? What do?
Could you not do, we were talking about drugs testing earlier, and about how, depending on what type of contract they've got and what it says in it, you should be able to, as an employer, suggest that you would like to do a drugs or an alcohol test, and if they say no, then question them as to why not.
Yeah. So from my view, I'm not an employer, I work for myself, but if I was in that position, I'd be looking at maybe softening the blow. So if I bring an individual in and say, I think you've got a drugs problem, is that the reason that
I think you need that informal chat first of all, before you get
find out the
harder as you go along.
Then if you suspect that's the issue, then I'd be looking at maybe doing a drugs and alcohol test on everybody on the site. Yeah?
So it's
Not
not just
because
the
of this. This is
individual, yeah.
we're having a random. The company are going to do a drugs and alcohol test. Everybody's in, and you're all going to do it. So everybody's
I
going.
don't think you can do that.
But
Unless your contract of employment says you can do that.
I think
you
can
can
legally.
You can, yeah.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
If the person doesn't want it, they can leave site.
Yeah.
They can withdraw, they can say no.
They can say
Yeah,
no.
they can say
Yeah,
no,
but
they
then
don't
that
have
goes
to,
down
but
to
then it's a guilty from omission, isn't it?
A suspicion.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
But if you
Normally it's a vote.
take the individual and actually go, I'm going to alcohol and drugs test you, then you're looking at information to build a case potentially for dismissing. If you're doing everybody, then you're looking at slightly softening the blow.
I think you've got to have a policy, you can't just, I think that all comes down to you.
Well, you've got contract of employment.
It's got to be
I know
in there.
Companies that I work with
Most
have
places
that
have
It's
policy.
got to be in there.
They have that policy.
It's got to be in there, and then they know. Because at the end of the day, if you do that test on everyone and say there's not a legal problem there, and you find 4 or 5 of them fail or more, you've got to have a next stage, haven't you?
Yeah, exactly. Well, then my next question is, what happens when the results come back? What do we do then? Because this isn't an unusual situation. There are drugs and alcohol tests done on building sites, and the results come back in a negative way for certain individuals. What do you do then?
I think there's a couple of issues. There's one is the safety of the worker,
Yeah.
and others, if they're obviously under the influence, if they're flagged up that they do have an issue, then there's also a supportive element to that. So you should be talking to them about, well, obviously this is really difficult, really dangerous, signposting them to services, specialist services that can do that. The other thing you can do around drug testing though is offer a voluntary drug testing service, which is seen as a supportive measure. So if you sort of say, right, the person, right, I'm going to get clean, right, well, we can actually offer this, and every time you have a negative, that's great. And some people will actually find that a supportive measure.
Yeah, so there's got to be sort of softly approaches to actually dealing with the issue, because you're not necessarily trying to build a case for dismissal, you're trying to actually support the individual, you understand the issue, then get facts, and then look at the support network after.
Well, you're also into legal limits. What basis do you, if it's drunk, for instance, if you pass the legal limit to drive, are you okay to work on site? Unless you've got it written into their contract of employment, you're in
Yeah, well, I think if you've got a second issue on that is that you are responsible for other people's safety as well.
Yeah,
That's
right.
right.
And
People
if you
safety
are,
on site.
and if you,
The
and if
wider-
they're over, I don't want to be near them in
No,
that
no,
digger
that's right.
or that dumper.
No, the
They're
wider
over the
issue
limit,
for the,
that's-
for the greater good of the building site has got to be paramount, and the individual can be dealt with in the way that if he's over the limit, then
You need something
legally
in the
he can't be
contract.
on that site operating the machine.
That's a really good point, Trevor, and also not only the safety of it, but the chap's coming to work late on a regular basis. What are the other blokes going to think? Oh, he's getting away with it.
Yeah.
Coming in late.
Yeah, so
Does that start setting a bad culture in the site? And then before you know it, all of them are starting to be a bit erratic with their time.
There's a bit of an old-fashioned way, which is a bit controversial, is sometimes you need to sacrifice official land.
Well, possibly.
No, I don't mean that in a
I know what
nasty,
you mean,
but you
yeah.
do
You
shape.
certainly need to deal with it. You can't just let that
Yeah.
roll on, can
no,
you?
we can all do the softly approach, but at some time you've got to actually face the hard facts and deal with the,
Yeah.
you know, the information that's presented in front of you. And if the safety of the rest of the site is paramount, that's got to be.
Because if someone knows someone's on that and something's happened, and how do you then deal with that? They know that that person's on drugs, should we say,
Mm.
and they've got away with that.
Yeah.
You know, and oh, that's all right, I can do that as well. No, you can't. I
If
mean,
it's-
Danny works for someone who has got basically a zero tolerance
Yeah.
to
Yeah, it's instant dismissal.
and I actually rewritten their contracts. They had a little line on the bottom that some of our, you know,
but
that can be tested.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
black and white.
that-
isn't it?
that
Because-
finishes it, doesn't
There's
it?
no grey area. It's
No.
if you
And if they fail,
then
you're
fail,
off.
You're
But if you employed as, say, a digger driver, and you're over the limit, you can't drive a digger.
No.
So therefore, you
No,
go
but
over.
what limit? I think the limit on site has got to be lower than
Yeah.
it needs to drive a car.
But that's what I'm saying is,
Yeah.
the bottom line of it is, if you're over the limit, drink or drugs or whatever, and you're operating machinery, you can no longer operate that machinery, so you leave site. If you come back the next day and you're still over the limit, you leave site. And at some point, the company that you work for is going to have to say, we can no longer employ you as a digger driver because you're not fit to drive one.
You're
so
not fulfilling.
I know a company many years ago. They had a tarmac gang, and they thought two of these people in that tarmac gang were, you know, were drug takers. So they tested the whole gang, and the foreman and the assistant foreman failed. The rest of them passed. They actually sacked two people, because they didn't want to sack. Because they didn't.
Let's move on to number 4.
Who's doing Fred then?
Well, I'll just, I'll muddle through, mate, unless you want to come out and help me out.
Number four.
Oh my God, this is
Read my
a big
handwriting. Dyslexic takes over the
Perhaps
pen.
Fred died,
Oh.
and then we all went home.
Anything could happen now.
Yeah.
You have noticed that Fred has started to take many of his phone calls in private and makes excuses to leave work early without giving a detailed reason. So what might be the problem here?
looking for a new job and they've got lots of interviews.
He could be,
Yeah, that's one.
he could be receiving phone calls from an agent saying, I've got this job for you, and he's having to go and
I don't think that's the answer I'm looking for, but
Could be a completely
The kids are home
innocent
on their
reason like
own.
that. Yeah. What else
Could
could
be
it
a
be?
carer situation again.
Could be a carer.
He's got to go and take someone up or look after them, and
Yeah.
then he leaves.
So he's got,
Carer or parent.
that would probably be a family situation where he's the carer for a member of the family. Maybe the phone calls are urgent. Oh, you need to get back because somebody's fallen.
Child from school.
Or, yeah, could be children.
most of it relationships.
Sorry?
Most of it's relationships.
Relationships, yeah.
It's
What are the
most
relationships then?
Might have
Oh,
a
just-
house problem.
A woman who's got to speak to him 10 times a day.
Well,
You know.
some relationships work like that. don't
Oh no.
they? Sorry, Vince.
Was that hang on a minute?
He could have health issues. There could be something he's talking to the doctors, or he's trying to arrange healthcare for his wife, or
No, that's all.
Most of these situations, you'd want to be taking that discussion in private.
yeah.
So you'd want to take yourself out of the workplace and maybe walk around the corner or go into an office, and it could be a fairly innocent thing. But if it's happening regularly, how is that going to affect the workplace? it might affect the way that people act on the site. They might see that, okay, well, maybe I can take my personal phone call, deal with my personal life while I'm at work, rather than wait until I'm at home. So they might take the mickey and take too much time out of work. But yet, I think not being concentrated at work because they're expecting a phone call, that in a construction site situation, we've mentioned the instance where you're in charge of a heavy piece of machinery. If you're not concentrating on what you're doing, then that could be to the detriment of somebody else's safety, not just theirs.
And leaving work early, I mean, it depends how much you pay someone, but I've recently done this. It's quite interesting. If you look at timesheets, what time people sign in and out, and what time people actually are working to and from, you do 70 guys, 15 minutes or half an hour, times that by the 5 or 6 days if they're working on a Saturday, that cost to the business goes through the
Is it theft or fraud?
Well, actually, it's fraud. Yeah, it's counted as fraud. So if I say I got here at 8:30 and I didn't, I got there at 9, it is actually fraud, because I've had to deal with this, and it's really difficult because you go, if it's a few times, or you know, you can't be too anal, or we aren't with like, okay, got a dentist appointment, but if it is every single day, then at some point you've got to go, hold on a minute, like, why am I paying you an extra half an hour?
I analysed someone's phone bill once in a month, and because it was huge, his phone bill was 48 hours in the month on phone calls to non-work related numbers. I deducted his wage by 48 hours, deducted the cost of the phone calls. You know what? It all stopped. It was taking the.
Yeah, because it's being reasonable and going like, okay, call here, call
Yeah.
there.
I don't mind that.
Problem, but if it's all the
48
time,
hours in a month.
because they don't undercharge, do they?
So we've got lots of possibilities as to what might be the problem. So what might the company be able to do about it?
Mobile phone policy,
Yeah,
which we've got.
that's most big companies, most sites would have no mobile phones on site, and that would deal with it. But that might mean if it's some of these, some of these family issues, some of these personal issues, that might mean that they can't come to work at all because they need to be on the end of that phone.
They can make you aware of that though, can't they?
Exactly. So we need to have a conversation with that person. Yeah.
You must have seen a digger driver on a phone while it's working. I'm sure that's the same as a car.
Yeah.
You know that is
Yeah.
the same.
Yeah. If you're not concentrating while you're at work, then especially on the construction site, you're in danger. But yeah, find out from the person why they're on the phone all the time, because if it is a caring situation, then we might be able to have some kind of
flexible times, flexible.
I have a policy.
So
If you
that
want to
you
get
can
someone on
leave
site, phone the youngest person on site because they've got their phone in their hand.
At the very least, we want.
You've seen the iWatch things
Yeah.
now, because I had someone go, it's not a phone, it's a watch.
Oh yeah, that's
Yeah, these are watches now.
At the very least, we want to make sure that person goes to a safe place before they make that call or receive that call. So maybe we give them dispensation to make a phone call every hour, so they have to go to a safe place to make a phone call every hour. If it's a family situation and they need to be in reasonably constant contact. What else might the company be able to do about it? Any other thoughts?
You could suggest, like, I know it sounds silly, but we give our guys, I think they come in at 8, and then at like 10, they get half an hour morning break to make calls.
Yeah.
And then at 1, they get half an hour, and then they finish at half 4. So it is only every couple of hours, and just kind of pointing out that, you know, if you do want to make the calls, we're not saying no, but maybe do it at the time that we're not paying you, because, you know. We have to give people adequate breaks throughout the day, and I think we also offer them a break in the afternoon if they want it, but it would be an unpaid break. But it's the same as
smokers, for instance, in an office environment, smokers have to go outside to smoke. And if they're heavy smokers, they might be going out at least once an hour to have a smoke, and that's 5 to 10 minutes, I don't know. But that takes time out of the day, doesn't it? But they would have to have some agreement with the company to be able to do that. So it's the same situation here, I think. There can be agreements made to help that person's situation, which might well be a very valid reason.
But it's not only them, is it? Because if you're only in a gang of 2 or 3, the gang stops.
Yeah, that's true. So
Doing
that's
that.
why it has to be talked about to
Yeah.
find a solution, rather than just say, right, you can go every hour to take a phone call. But leaving work early is probably not an option. We need to have a talk to them about that, unless they want to reduce their hours as a standard. But certainly a discussion needs to be had. Otherwise,
It might just
said
even
earlier, it
be
might-
like a short-term thing that they're trying to
Yeah.
sort out, like care for their parents
Yeah.
or whatever. So saying to them, do you want to reduce your hours for this particular month to try and deal with that, and then we'll put them back to normal. And it is just being fair, and because I know that if they're having to try and deal with that sort of thing, the last thing that they would want to do is not then have the money to try and like support the rest of their family anyway. So
that's right.
reducing their hours can sometimes be the worst thing you could possibly do for somebody.
Okay, well, I think we've talked that one out as well. Really, the next steps, what we all ought to be thinking about next at our firms. Next steps, we've got to make sure within your firm there is somebody identified who can be contacted in the event of somebody suffering from a mental health issue, and almost you need somewhere to go as a wellbeing emergency situation. The workforce need to know about it. It needs to be well publicised. You need those dreaded posters on the wall in your canteen, in the offices, on the pin boards. So make sure everybody is aware that there is something if they need someone to talk to, and that it would be in complete confidence. Identify some useful websites. There was some mentioned earlier, Lighthouse Club. There are others, of course. Helplines, so that the workforce knows that there is a phone number that they can phone, and it's somebody outside of the business. That sometimes is an advantage, because you don't want to be talking about bringing your dirty washing to work, for instance. You could phone somebody outside of the company and just talk to them. Maybe they can help. And if it is something like a stress situation, there's a lot of good advice that can be delivered over the phone on just a phone call. And that advice might stop this situation from getting out of hand. Have the subject talked about at work. It's a bit like safety 15, 20 years ago. People didn't like to talk about safety because safety was something that cost money and it's a negative thing. But nowadays, people are quite happy to talk openly about safety. Health and safety matters. It needs to be something that's talked about and encouraged in conversation. People's well-being. We talked a lot today about diet, about making good decisions, and being generally well at work. If you're well at work, you'll enjoy work better. You'll enjoy home life better, and the whole of life becomes better. And as Danny said, it's a spiral upwards rather than a spiral downwards. You feel better, you make better decisions, you feel better about those decisions, you feel even better, and your mental health improves as well. It's interesting to note that there are a similar number of hours lost in the construction industry through mental health matters as through injuries in the industry. So it is as big an issue as health and safety, so injuries at work. In fact, mental health issues are becoming so common now that it's taken over as being the most costly condition to the workforce. So it is something that we need to focus on. All the companies need to focus on it and improve the way that they deal with it. Has anybody got any questions to the floor? Because I'm not confident I can answer all the questions. Any other questions or comments? Okay.
It's a big subject, Steve, but we've got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think that's how it didn't go exactly as planned, and it was very much a toe in the water job for the group. It's about trying to make a difference, and that's why we give up our time to do these sort of things, to try and make a difference. And I think, you know, as a group on the Isle of Wight, we certainly have made a difference over the years, haven't we, Steve, Roger, Danny? Yeah, and you know, it's really great to see new members, Vix, Katie, Tyler, coming in and taking part into the job, and thank you for the old faces turning up again. Is Trevor asleep?
No.
And the support of the training group with Michelle and Jackie there from Gibbs. It's good. And Brian, thank you very much for your very timely attendance on this course, and I hope that you've had a bit of an insight into how the construction industry wants to address these sort of issues, because I know with your long career in public health and prison service, you know, you've been trying to get people to buy into the public health message, and I hope that you can see that, you know, as an industry, we're trying to do that. Yeah. So thanks everybody, and if anybody wants to become a member of the group, we don't meet that often. We try and put one of these events on once a year with a theme. We do report to the National Steering Group twice a year. And if you want to spend a bit of time and try and make a difference, then just please let yourself be known, and you'll be very welcome as a member. Thank you.